Five.
That's all. Greetings, everybody. Welcome, Alex. I was going to say members of the public, but in particular, welcome, Sue, on behalf of the media, and welcome, council staff. This is a hearings committee meeting to discuss dog bylaws, but we will start with the karakia. Kia hora te marano, kia whakapapa whanamu te moana. He huarahi ma tātou e te rangi nei, aroa atu, aroa mai, tātou e a tātou katoa, ui e
Tai.
Thank you very much. And the next thing is apologies. We have one apology from Councillor Plummer. Do we have any others? I don't think we do. Do I have a mover to accept the apologies? Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Maynard seconds that. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Do we have any conflict of interest? We do not. We'll come to A4. That's on the agenda, which refers to pages 1 to 5, which is a confirmation of the last hearings committee we had in August, where we dealt with things like Easter Sunday trading and the speed review. Would somebody like to move that we accept the minutes as correct? Thank you, Councillor Gray. A seconder. I will second that. All in favour? Aye. Thank you very much. And now we come to the main business of today, which is to think about the dog bylaw. And we've got submissions which are written and in front of us, but we have one public submitter. And if I could invite you to come forward, Alex, and you're most welcome. And we're looking forward to hearing what to say.
Thank you. Tina does send her apologies. She couldn't be here. Councillors. So you have the Cape Palliser Ratepayers Association submission already given to you. Just to give you a bit of background on that, there are 12 committee members, and the submission was done through consultation with all 400 odd members of the Cape Palliser Ratepayers Association. So it's not been done in isolation. So as you can see, our submission is that to allow dogs in Maui campground area, also either side of the Maui campground and Palliser break, and towards the wool sheds as well. Because what we see is there is a need for camping somewhere in the South Wairarapa, but it doesn't allow what was mentioned here as members of the family or their canine family to actually be able to go on holiday. We also have a problem with if you pin up to a specified campground that is full, then the overflow needs to have some ability to allow for the dogs. So that's why we're talking about the breaks on either side of the Maui campground. The Maui campground is unusual compared to other campgrounds as much as it's overlooked by a lot of residents and ratepayers, and generally any behaviour that's antisocial is noticed and commented on, and rectification can occur, as opposed to being in the middle of nowhere where no one can actually see what's going on. So that is the submission of the Cape Palliser Ratepayers Association. We'll get to take questions.
Right, that was very to the point. Well done. Now, Councillor.
Just to clarify, but leashed at all times? Understanding?
Leashed and with the expectation that on a lead at all times, cleaning up the droppings at all times, maintaining control and appropriate behaviour of their dogs so as not to annoy other campers. And certainly it would be expected that we'd have signage to that extent.
So sorry to confirm, you said they are leashed all the time?
Leashed
at all times. Yeah, so no danger for them.
No. Yeah. Generally, there are a large number of dogs anyway in Maui. I can think of about 9 or 10 that are generally be walking around anyway.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. I just have one question, Alex, if I may. We have had a number of submissions from coastal folk, not necessarily from Cape Palliser, but there are some people who are going to be agitated, I think, if we accept your recommendation. What do you think we should say to those?
I think this is very much a bylaw that has been constructed by the affected public within a particular area. We're not saying that it should be a blanket bylaw for the whole South Wairau. It's also able to be revoked if we find that there's an issue at any time. And I'm sure that they'll control officers would certainly be letting us know if it became an issue. But also remember that the Ratepayers Association manages that campground anyway, or certainly assists in the managing, maintenance, mowing of lawns, cleaning up. And so very much we are more than happy to take on the issue.
Right. Okay, well, look, thank you very much. Thank you for your succinctness. I appreciate that. So in terms of our agenda, we have just heard from the public submitters, and now we're going to move on to section D. And at the start of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Katie if she will sort of summarise the issues for us, and hopefully give her assessment of what the key issues are that we should be putting our minds to.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you are well aware, the control of dogs policy and bylaw is under review. We began the review process with some initial engagement with the community, and all dog owners were invited with their registration to be able to participate in this process. Initially, we received feedback from 18 members of the public, and I have summarized that feedback, and it's available in Appendix 2. That feedback initially sort of helped shape the draft policy and bylaw that went out for formal consultation. It remained largely unchanged, except for the fact that there was particular interest in the areas, some coastal areas and camping areas for dogs to be allowed. Formal consultation took place between the 3rd of August and the 3rd of September using the special consultative procedure. We received 10 submissions, most of which were different from the initial 18. So in total, there was feedback from about 26 members of the public. All of that feedback and analysis is available for your review in table 6.1. I think one of the big sort of controversies that came out of this consultation process was dogs being allowed in coastal camping areas. I believe that 80%, so 8 of the 10 formal submissions received indicated support for amending the policy and bylaw to allow for dogs in specific coastal camping areas at all times of the year. The 2 sites that were suggested in particular were Naui camping area, as well as the Tora Coast. There's a few considerations that Rick and I have worked through that should be considered along with these submissions, including the impact on farming communities and the risk of sheep measles and the impact that that might have on stock, as well as the capacity of the current bylaw officers to enforce the policy. And I think that is about it. I'm happy to take any questions.
We'll invite questions, and we've got one on my left. Thank you.
Hi.
So the 8 out of 10 supporting changing the bylaw for coastal areas was it for all coastal areas, or are we talking about, because from what I've seen, it seems to be it's actually the majority of the support was towards the Naui.
Yeah.
I just thought, and not actually coming with regards to the Tora.
Yes. So in the consultation document, there were 3 options that were put forward. One of them was amending the policy and bylaw to allow for dogs in specific coastal camping areas at all times of the year. And 8 submissions out of the 10 supported that. 1 submission indicated support for allowing dogs in all coastal camping areas at low, like off season. And then 1 submission indicated support to maintain the status quo and not have dogs in any camping areas. The only 2 that were campgrounds that were mentioned by name in the submissions were Naui in particular, and Tora as well. But Naui definitely was the one that was most vocal in support of having dogs allowed in the coastal camping areas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Right, any other questions from anyone? Okay, thank you. There is a respondent in here who draws my attention to the fact that at the end of the swimming season, Featherston Pool is opened up for a little event called Dogs and Togs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely fun event. And actually it helps to fund the maintenance of the neighbouring dog park, as a matter of fact. Now, strictly speaking, all of those dog owners, including myself, have breached the bylaw, I think. What's your...
I actually asked Rick about this in particular. So
we'll ask Rick in a minute. In that case. So if you make a note that that's coming up. There was another interesting submission from Roger Barton, who comments on the fact that if we do allow dogs in coastal areas, that there is a potential for I think it's called sheep measles to be spread, because often people from urban areas aren't aware that this was even a thing. Possibly we'll leave that for Rick to comment on as well. Okay. Any other submissions of interest? Okay. Well, then, look, if we could sort of swap myself and invite Rick up. And, so if we, I think that there's possibly 3 questions I have. 2 of them are reasonably, I think, self-contained. With the sheep measles, I think the point the submitter makes is that provided dogs are kept on leads, provided that people pick up dog feces, this is probably not a great issue. But we need to be able to, I think, reassure that those things are happening. So I'll get you to comment on that in a minute. But the dogs and I was going to say dogs and togs is probably a specific thing, but now that we've mentioned it on live TV, I'm sure every swimming pool will want to do it from now on. And lastly, in respect to the camping, the coastal camping grounds, at the moment, it's reasonably easy to define. We can do certain things and can't do certain things. Are there any technical issues with defining that if you're camping here, you can have your dogs here, but not here? So I'll just let you take those in any order.
Yeah, so the sheep measles one came to our attention about 2 or 3 years ago when Roger came and saw me about it, and highlighted that, especially in the rural areas, how, as your worship has pointed out, affects their farming. And so we entered into an educational situation where we actually put part of the registration, there was handouts and that, and we've continued that momentum to educate as well. So for this, to open up areas where we haven't traditionally seen dogs, we have the potential of those that are outside our district and are from more an urban area coming in without the knowledge. And I would like to say all dog owners are nice and responsible, keep their dog on a lead. But if that was true, I wouldn't have a job in that part of the area. So that's just a consideration, is that we do have a strong rural area out there they have an economic livelihood that could be affected if we had a substantial increase of dogs that potentially, knowingly or unknowingly, had an infection or weren't vaccinated against. So I think that's what Roger and I certainly would be pushing as well, was to just be mindful. We have a large section out there that have livelihoods, and if we increase it to where we get the numbers of those dogs, has a potential to have an impact economically on that area.
Right.
The Dog and Togs one is a event that happened, must have been about 4 years ago when it kicked off. Was at the end of the swimming season before we drained the pool. Came to me with the amenities manager, and we saw it as part of granting permission through discretion to allow for that one day for dog owners to not only have a chance to socialise, but we also used it as an educative point of contact as well. And I know various animal behaviouralists have been part of that. And we certainly did previously been part of that, to being as an avenue where we could actually impart some of our education and communication with the community as a whole.
Yeah.
It's a good event. I've gone myself with my dog. She doesn't like the water, but we can tweak it a bit more. But I still think it's part of the education and part of our an avenue we can use to educate the animal control side.
Does the bylaw give us the discretion to do what you have said and actually create an exemption for an event?
I'd have to look further into that to give you a confirmation of a yes or no.
Right.
My understanding it did, but I'd have to reread it just in specific to that.
Right.
Because it would be, it's a council property, and whether we have permission
I see what you mean. Yeah.
in terms of exempting
The
an
ownership.
activity. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think the bylaw covers the property.
The other thing that was mentioned on here that wasn't brought up in the overview either was with regards to dogs at large events, like coming to the Martinborough Fair, coming to Toast. And I don't think it's Toast. I think it's, around the being around the middle part of the township when everyone's there gathering to. I just noticed that was actually something that was brought up, and I certainly I remember seeing a push about trying to ensure that you don't leave your dog in the car, but you actually don't want them at the. So what can the council do towards that? I understand that it's an event that's run by someone else, the Martinborough Fair, but because of the timing of when it is, and a lot of people that are coming into Martinborough to come to the Martinborough Fair have no idea how far away they're actually parking. So leaving your dog in a car where you may actually end up 10 k's away. Well, that's probably an exaggeration, but it feels like it when you're having to navigate 1,500 stalls.
Yes.
So
with the event, and it is particular with the Martinborough Fair, especially I think from memory it was February, March with the two events, and February was extremely hot. So we advised they came and saw us, and we advised them to put the communications out in their promotional material. Leave your dog at home, definitely not to leave it in a car. But it's a multitude of things. You've got 10,000 people in a small space walking around. Dogs aren't used to that much, and it doesn't take much for a dog's foot to be stepped on and it will react. So we've always said to the event organisers to promote heavily not to introduce dogs, or advise that dogs are kept away, because it's a recipe for disaster.
I mean, Martinborough Fair is quite unique because 10,000 possibly for Toast, but 25 to 30,000 for the fair. So it's huge. We're talking about really, really large numbers of people coming from very early, and you may be leaving your car to go early at 6:30 or 7 in the morning, but people don't realise how hot it actually gets before 10 a.m. as well. And so it's like, well, you end up there for the morning. And when you are bringing your dog, walking it through the fair and there's not a lot of places that they're able to get water or, you know, stall holders aren't expected to provide water for dogs. So, I mean, it's a concern as a dog owner. It's just a concern, you know, to me that how can we help to publicise or to get that out, because what I know that there was a push by the council. It said, you know, please leave your dogs at home.
Yeah.
You know, but maybe that's something I don't know if we can put it in the bylaws but I don't know how much council has control over something like the Martinborough Fair that is run by Rotary.
I think you would just whether a temporary ban because that's what you're basically saying is that the roads that they can use now, we have no ban on walking your dog there.
No.
My question, and I have to investigate it and look into it, was whether we could put a temporary ban into where that takes up for dog owners. I'm not sure. And again, what I don't want to see is suddenly everyone come over with their dogs, find out it's a temporary ban, they're sitting in cars as well. So I think pumping that information out early and fast and getting that is one. But I'll look in terms of whether we could do a temporary ban in the area. Would that?
And it's literally just around the main area, and it's for the dogs. Like, I mean, I'm really thinking of the dog safety.
Correct.
It's more so, I mean, obviously I'm concerned if the dog was stepped on and ended up lunging or something like that, but it's actually safety because of the heat.
Yes.
More often than not, it's the heat. And if you start thinking about it and go, oh, there's actually a lot of people who just leave the dog in the car, you know, which is a normal.
Yeah, and that's one message that I think, especially this year, we're looking at Bushman as well, was, and I know SPCA have been, excuse the pun, hot on this, but is actually the heat from the asphalts and that on the dog's paws. So yeah, I think I'll look at this temporary ban part of it and whether it comes into this or whether we can do outside of that. But it's to increase the promotion and I think we can help with the events to promote that as well.
Rather than it needing to be in the bylaw, it's more about education, isn't it?
I think so. I think that would be the simplest thing is if people just recognise if, and you correct me, you know, 25, 30,000 people in a small space, dogs are not used to that number and it doesn't take much for a dog to react and then it's a lunging or it's a bite just because it's been stepped on. It's its natural reaction and would prefer to be proactive and avoid that. And simply not having the dogs in there would mitigate that. But we can look at those.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of people who that's what they sell. So they have their little dogs that just sit behind the
That's right.
being a dog owner. So I know this, you know, their models showing the wears of the jackets and things like that there.
We'll call them staff.
But they have, so those staff members, they have their own water supply.
Yeah, no, I want to pick up that point in a second, but I'll just defer to councillors McCauley, Gray, if they have any questions.
No.
Okay. Well, my question is this, and look,
I did have a question if you wanted me to go first.
yeah, go for it.
All right, okay,
Yeah,
great.
thank you.
One of the things that we've talked about a couple of times, Rick, informally and outside of this, is the idea of having lifetime tags for dogs. Our neighbours to the north have got that through. My understanding in the conversations that we've had is that our interpretation of the Dog Control Act so far is that that doesn't allow for lifetime tags and that we need to supply annual tags. Is there room to have it within this bylaw where we specify that we are interpreting annual tags to be a reusable thing, so it doesn't have to be a different tag every year, that it could be a...
No, you couldn't supersede the statutory act.
Not to supersede it, but to make it clear that we're meeting the requirements of the statutory act by having a tag that could be reused each year. So when you go to the Dog Control Act, which I'm sure you probably know quite well, it says that we issue to the owner of the dog a receipt for the fee paid and a label or disc for the registration year. It doesn't say that it has to be a new label or disc for each registration year.
So if you go,
Just before I let you carry on. Can I just check that that is a matter that's subject to this type of bylaw, or whether it isn't a matter that, shall we say, deserves attention of its own right?
In a different policy.
Yes, I'm just trying to, I mean,
Well, we don't want to miss the opportunity if it can be.
no, I don't wish to either. In fact, I've got this matter raised against Mayor's report to the full council. But are we able to incorporate Councillor Gray's suggestion into this bylaw?
No. I think, and the reason is if you look at 34.4, it says that a supplier of labels of this number consecutively are marked with the name of the district and the year for which they are issued.
We will issue them for 10 years.
Yeah, but you've got to put them on each year that it's there, so.
No, that's not what it says. But that's not what I want to debate now anyway.
And the year for which.
The question is whether this particular provision is relevant to this particular.
I don't believe so.
Okay, right. Okay. Do you wish to add something?
I don't think this bylaw would be the appropriate place to address that, but we could address it through fees and charges.
Right, okay, yeah.
I think that would be the logical case.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Are you happy that it's going to come up to the next week? And
Just want to make sure that this isn't like an opportunity.
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That's it, but
Yeah.
I think that's good.
So I've just realised that when I was reading the version of the bylaw that I was starting out to read, it doesn't actually include Schedule A and Schedule B, and now I've got a different version which does. Now, Schedule A, in fact, specifically includes swimming pools as a place where dogs are prohibited. So I think what we do need to do is to make an amendment to that, which gives the council the right to declare particular events, etc., as exceptions to that. And in a way, that would be the opposite of part two, because part two, which I think starts to relate to the issue of the Martinborough Square in heavy use, says that you're not allowed to take a dog onto any sports field that's being used during sporting events. Now, I think here, what we could well do is almost the opposite of that in respect of the Martinborough Square. We could say, well, you're allowed to take your dog onto the Martinborough Square, but not when it's being used for events. And we may need to just tweak that, because there may be some events where it doesn't quite matter, but obviously a big event such as the Martinborough Fair is a different event from just somebody's stall. Yes, Amanda.
We potentially could use something like notified events, and when we
Yes.
the events
Yes.
advertised by the event holder, they need to say that no dogs are permitted.
Right.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, that covers it.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think we're
I think that
progress.
should be some kind of little thing there for if you have a stall, like, you know, like, because like I say, like the staff members who are wearing the jackets that may not be human.
okay. Right.
Amanda was up before. Is that still relevant? You had your hand up before.
Oh, yeah,
Just
no,
like-
yeah,
no, sorry.
notified events.
Okay, you've covered it all. Yeah.
So I think the issues we are going to deal with, where we might possibly, depending on our voting, is just to tweak the swimming pools, to tweak the Martinborough Square, to enable us to put a provision in terms of big events, and I don't think incidentally that in any way prohibits the sort of educative process which you've referred to, which is also very valuable. In fact, I noticed one very, I would say, unhappy respondent in here. Noticed something at one of our coastal areas where you in fact decided to adopt an educative process rather than issuing a fine. And this caused them some disturbance. But I'd like to say thank you for your approach. I think it gets a better long-term reaction from people if they can understand why the provision is there. So thank you for that.
I'm just wary of the third question on coastal camping. I'm not quite sure if I got to answer it. I suppose from an officer's point of view, the things we would like to highlight is that as it currently stands, I have 2 FTEs who have 2,500 square kilometres of geographical region to cover, and that goes through the Christmas period. When we're talking about Ngawi and Ngawi specifically with the campground, it's probably our most popular, and that's a lot of campers. And the questions or experience that or answers that have come to me from the officers is, in the past, it was the Ngawi community that actually promoted the prohibition of dogs in that campground. And so we've sort of gone full circle and back to where we were. From our point of view is that it's working well as it is now. We're having a very limited amount of attacks or incidences, not totally not there, but very low, which would suggest to us that the prohibition is working. And the question, and it's a bit like where the ambulance decides to sit, is if we open this up, are we going to see an increase of incidences, which especially in a campground where we've got minors there as well, are we going to see an increase in terms of incidents with children and campgrounds, especially when they say it's on a lead? We've had 10-metre leads where they've gone diving, left their dog there. So a dog is pinned or pegged to a 10-metre lead and has a coverage of where it sits, and they've gone all day. The byproducts of dogs is another thing, and it's a constant bugbear for all animal control units up and down the country, is that while we, even here in our district, we provide poo bags for owners to use, we're constantly getting complaints about byproducts being on the roads, the streets and the footpaths, et cetera, et cetera. Well, again, I look at it from the 1%ers that I'm having to deal with, and it's those that don't care about picking up that byproduct. They don't care about the length of their leads with their dogs. And some campers just don't like dogs, but they like camping. And that's what we, and I suppose ultimately as decision makers, is we just want to highlight the balance of do they need to interact with these dogs in terms of that. And last year we know we had a call, there were a few with a breed that's considered not the nicest that's popped up, and they're from out of our district, so they're not even locals that are using it. So just from an officer's point of view, if we open this up, how much extra enforcement are we actually asking the officers to do, who at this point is probably at capacity, if not over capacity? And secondly, considering what a lead is. So when you're thinking about it, is, you know, a lead can vary from a 1 metre to 10, 20 metre lead. What's circumference are we actually having these dogs interact with other people?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We have a list of dogs that are not allowed, don't we? Is that our list or the government?
No, that's from the government. So they're
Right.
banned breeds that have come in.
Can we ban the breed that we have just referred to ourselves?
I personally wouldn't want to go down that track because I'm not an expert in terms of that. It's just a breed that I think has got a bad name, but I believe all dogs are as good as, yeah. And, I mean, if you looked at statistically, Labradors have the most instances, but that's because most people have a Labrador, you know. So, yeah, or a Lab Cross. Or,
so the offer from the Cape Palliser residents and ratepayers to, in a sense, monitor and, shall we say, take care of these sort of issues, is that any comfort to you?
Yeah, it would be depending what the detail is. So they're not warranted officers, so I'm not quite sure how their interaction. They'll just be, for want of a better word, a Joe Public. But yeah, I'd have to work out or discuss with them how that would sort of look.
Do they have some role at the moment as sort of the kaitiaki of the camp?
Yeah, that I don't know. Okay.
Sorry, I do. They they do take responsibility. They do maintenance down there. So it's probably not your area. There's probably more amenities. And do maintenance down on that area. But they don't have to. But they take it on board as the Ngāwi Ratepayers Association, which I think Alex actually did state in his. So if, you know, I know there's a very, very large area to be looking at, but I think there's enough showing from previous years, going back to when it was opened, the amount that I don't believe it was a huge issue, that the majority of people that they were actually, you know, it's about people that have taken them in their motorhomes. You know, it's literally about those people that are actually having their dogs in their motorhomes and then they're just taking them out for a walk. But it's not so much the ones that are putting up the tents, although that has been known as well, people to have their dogs. But I think if they were looking at the Ngāwi campground and the two break areas, and it only got overturned because of the Ngāwi Ratepayers. It only got put in place because of the Ngāwi Ratepayers Association. They asked us to do it. Now they're asking us to take it away because they didn't find it of any benefit. So to me, I'm like, well, that means we gave it a try and to see if it worked. If they're quite, you know, if they're quite adamant now that it hasn't, I think that we need to listen to the ones that are living out there and actually see it every single day.
Yeah, from an officer's point of view, one incident that affects a person that has an injury is one too many. And from an officer's point of view, we're looking to mitigate what it is. And at the moment, the evidence would show to us that we're not having a major issue. If we open this up and there's a child or an elderly person that is attacked, is that something, you know, the ratepayers are going to put their hands up? From an officer's point of view, we are obligated to ensure we're mitigating those circumstances so they don't happen. And as far as we're concerned, our public safety level is that at the moment we don't see an issue. We see a potential for that risk to be increased, and therefore we'll have more enforcement and we'll have more incidences to handle. And in the last, we had a local that had a dog that de-sleeped a lady, and she was sent to Wellington. So,
and that was with this in place.
And that was with this in place.
Yeah, so
the locals know it's in place, so the locals aren't following what it is. How is an out-of-towner who doesn't have anything vested in this district other than to enjoy the sun and surf with his dog, where we're going to go with that? Because with all due respect to the ratepayers, they're not going to understand how to do an investigation and get the information we need to track someone down if they live in the Waikato or what it is, whether the dog's registered, microchipped or otherwise, what its history is, how are they taking enforcement. So mine is just to provide you the information of what we have, what our fears are in regards to it, and allow you to disseminate that information and decide what you want. But our preference would be the status quo.
So,
Would it be possible to have a halfway dog, not dog zone division in a camping ground? Just like you used to be able to pick smoking or not smoking sections of a restaurant, which makes them all smoking sections really, but that you could have some areas where it is okay to camp with your dog, and then there's some areas where it's definitely no dogs are allowed in that space, so that if you have a dog aversion, it's a place that you can be, but there's also availability for some people if they wanted to. Is that, I'm not overly familiar with the setup of the campgrounds, but is that something that could be
like on the breaks on either side instead of in the actual Ngāwi camping ground?
I mean, I understand that there would be resources needed for, you know, fencing and signage, and it would probably make enforcement difficult, but it seems like it might strike a bit of balance with providing some safety for people who don't want to be around dogs, but also some ability for dog owners to still enjoy the environment.
A number of the campgrounds are quite small. I don't know if it would provide adequate space to be able to have two separate areas. Like I'm just thinking in Ngāwi,
Andrew's probably the best at because he goes out.
It's probably they're crammed in like sardines, the cans there. I think it would start to spill over. Someone turned over with the dog thinking, well, I've only got a few meters over. Then a snowball effect. That's how I might see it.
But potentially enforceable at that point, if we've got very clear delineation between where you can and can't have a dog. If they are in the dog-free space with the dog, then that would be, enforceable or ticketable or.
The other thing is you still got to remember it's quite a geographical drive to get out there. So if we're informed at 9 o'clock, it's going to take us a couple of hours at a minimum to get out there to do the enforcement with it. And what has occurred, we've gone out there and they've moved on naturally. I hear the option.
It just seems that there's very clear direction from the community that this is what they want, but then also very clear direction from officers saying this is
Not what you want.
not optimal.
Yeah.
So trying to make everybody happy.
Okay, so we've covered three aspects that are, yes, Russell?
Yeah, councillor's idea of a halfway house solution by finding of apportionment of dividing up the camping ground. Yes, that has merits in terms of solution finding and appeasement and potential remedy both sides, but the practicality of it, I think, would be somewhat hard to achieve, and because it would also rely on people's individual conduct in terms of their responsibility of their dog. You also got the added, you've got the fact of people go to a camping ground to walk around and enjoy the whole space. It's up against that aspect. It's also the other timing aspect in terms of people are in their summer mode, free and easy use of space, coming from within the camping ground to the beach and coastal areas coming back. So again, it comes down to people's good management of their dog. If you were to go the way of providing for dogs within a camping ground. The other thing that is a key part to any upcoming decision making is, whilst you've heard from people who have taken the opportunity to give comment, you haven't heard from the vast majority of the public who may want to go to the camping ground and have free, unheated and peaceful use of normal use of a camping ground with no dogs.
Sorry, Russell, but they have been given the opportunity. You believe that we've put this out with enough time that actually there has been an opportunity and enough of an opportunity for people to be able to respond and to reply to this, right? So we've actually done due diligence, or are you saying we haven't?
Well, I think also you will recall back to.
Yeah.
But you may not.
I did ask
You
them.
may not.
Oh, but I did. Ask.
Because you will recall that Alex commented on the number of people who had formed the submission.
So 411.
So that's right.
411.
So I think in actual fact, it's fair to say that that's probably a better response rate than we're often accustomed to for many things. There are three things on the list at the moment that we'll need to make some decision or some direction on. One is the issue of swimming pools on the docks and togs. One is the Martinborough Square, and we just need to check, is there any other part of our district that would match the Martinborough Square in terms of congestion and what have you? Or maybe we need to phrase it in such a way that if there was
Greater Midwinter Festival. The Greater Midwinter Festival, and it runs for a whole month.
So would you phrase it as an event or a large event or something rather than specific?
I think that's
give us the discretion over the two.
And then we've got what sort of decision / direction do we need vis-a-vis coastal camping? There was one other slightly possibly off-track recommendation that came through, but it warmed my heart anyway, which is that if you're over 65, you shouldn't have to pay for any of this.
She reverts it round the other way. It should be double over 65.
Fair enough. So I don't see any wish to pursue that anymore. Is there anything else that came from the feedback, councillors, that you wish to pick up?
I do think that that the Naui campground and breaks on either side, I think that does need to come through to council as well. It's something to be looked at and to be decided on.
Yeah, so that'll be our decision in a second. So I think at the end of this process, it's now normal to have some recommendations. But I had a feeling that my agenda pack, in fact, does not include any
Recommendations in front of you.
so they are. Thank you. No, that's right.
There we go.
Okay, right. So if we look at page 6, thank you, Amy, we've got 5 recommendations there. And I think 1, 2, and 3 are reasonably pro forma, and we can take them as a job lot. Do I have a person who would, councillor, who would I do? Thank you, councillor Maynard. Councillor Macaulay seconds that. Any discussion? In that case, I'll put the motion that we affirm recommendations 1, 2, and 3. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Right, okay. And then we come to recommendation 4, that we recommend to council at its meeting on the 27th, which is not that far away, that it adopt the policy as per Appendix 1, or we can have either or. Recommendation 5 is that we amend it and send it to the council for adoption. Well, I have a feeling that we're going to prefer recommendation 5 rather than recommendation 4, which means it will become recommended.
Sorry, that's
Yeah.
two slightly different ones. That's to adopt the policy and this is to adopt the bylaw. So you could adopt it and say at the end of this, including the following amendments.
Okay, so we have to do it if okay.
Yeah, you could amend.
Right, okay. So one is that we adopt the policy as per Appendix 1. One is that we adopt the bylaw, or we ask council to adopt the bylaw as per Appendix 1. But what I think is that we will put 3 other recommendations first, is that irrespective of what we do with 4 and 5, that we just lost my notes now, I apologise. Has anybody got some suitable wording vis-a-vis the dogs and togs event? Which I think, what would we say? That
Can let things happen if they're really cute.
I love it.
Super cuteness.
That
Yeah.
can I just go back to the
Understanding, because you're looking at applying councillor officers' discretion.
here we go. Well, normally we would put it down as the CE's discretion. Yeah, so we're on page 91, and we're looking at Schedule A, Part 1, where dogs are prohibited in any public building or public place, including swimming pool. And what I'm seeking is some suitable wording that says the CE may make an exception for special events. In fact, I think that's possibly all that needs.
Wording, pretty good wording.
Yeah, this events in the interest of community building and education engagements.
Yeah. So if I just move that the
Well, what I was going to
Yeah.
say is that we I could put up to policy, including the following amendments, 1, and then I can put your other, and then we
Okay,
could maybe move it
excellent.
all together.
right, okay. So we've got a collective recommendation that we will adopt the policy with the amendment, which is that the chief executive may make an exception to special events. in respect of Schedule A, Part 1. Now, the next one is the Martinborough Square issue, which is that what we would do, I think, is now amend. I'm not sure which part we would amend, though. That's the slight problem I have. I suppose we could have Schedule A, Part 5, which would be any part of the district subject to
Large gatherings.
very large gatherings.
Be better if that came under an events policy.
Well, it's got to go in the dog bylaw.
Yeah, because it's for the dog, right?
Sorry, say that again. Sorry, any part of the district that comes.
Any part of the district that's subject to
Large gatherings.
Large events.
Then what do you can?
events that have very large numbers of people. Yep,
Yeah.
sorry.
We could just maybe notify the events, so then we can make a judgment call, because it's very difficult to say what is a very large event. Is that 5,000?
Oh, yes, well, absolutely. Yeah. No, you don't get to decide. No. Again,
So just notified events, that's it.
well, yes. No, again, notified by the chief executive.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And then the last issue we come to is the coastal camping, which it seems to me, after all the discussion, is either a yes or a no. We either continue with the status quo or we revert to status quo ex ante, which apparently up until 5 years ago, the dogs were able to go on a leash, I think. Was that correct?
And I think they were very clear that it would be with signage saying that leashed at all times and to pick up.
Yeah. So that's our responsibility to get the right signage and what have you there. As I think, okay. So I think it's a sort of a coin toss in a way. Do we include an amendment, or
I think we asked for that to come to the council meeting to be decided. Yeah.
It's a coin toss, but with very clear direction from our officers around the implications of changing this.
Well, I don't think we can have a recommendation, but I mean, we can note that officers recommended the opposite, but
Here it's an option, and it's an option 7 and that's number 7, number 2. Recommend to council to amend, and it actually has advantage and disadvantages, which the officers have put in here. So even if that comes through, like that's the amend, so and that's what to be thinking about. That so it actually they've already put through what, you know, the fact that the disadvantages are there's going to need to be additional resources, mitigate the risk to farming communities. It could even, if you wanted to add anything else in there, you know, to come to council.
well, that's true. We could add the take whatever steps are necessary to mitigate any risks that come from this decision. Full council makes the
decision. Yeah,
that's right. Okay, so what I sense is Councillor Maynard would suggest that we recommend to council that we allow dogs and
amending the proposed policy and bylaw to allow for dogs that are nominated coastal camping areas. Well, actually, at Ngawi camping ground and breaks.
Right.
Which some people may not want, and they might prefer it just to be on one break and not in the Ngawi camping ground and the other break, or that's why I think.
What's your view? What's your view of Tora?
I don't think it should be looked at Tora at this time. I think that Ngawi is the one that that had it previously, and yeah.
Right. Now, so do we have a seconder? So the recommendation is that we recommend to council that it be considered, which is sort of like passing the ball to them, really, isn't it?
So because
Well, everything has to come to council anyway to be approved, so.
It would be nice if it doesn't have to be re-litigated and we can just make a.
the bylaw, so I've just put that to amend the bylaw and allow for dogs.
And
now we can go and breaks just now.
What does breaks mean exactly, just for those who? When it says and breaks, what does that?
So they had he said there's breaks on either side of the camping ground.
You know, defer to Andrew.
surf break.
Oh, so the surf breaks on either side, yeah.
Front of John Priest's.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So before you even get into Narwee, like, yeah.
It's not something.
No, so I think we should just be looking at Narwee camping ground then. I don't think we need to look at the breaks because the breaks actually, well, are they camping areas?
It's the camping area, surf breaks in the camp.
So there's on either side, on both sides?
Yep.
So they are also council?
Okay,
Yeah, let's look at the Narwee campground and on the breaks then.
so councillor Maynard has moved that.
So that's 4 and 5, yeah.
So if you have stayed with JP.
I will second.
Okay, gone forward.
It gets to be,
Ask one more
I didn't realise that.
silly question.
go for it.
Is it possible to say that dogs are not allowed in campgrounds as a status quo unless the campground is approved for dog use, which gives us the opportunity to later on, as we have resources, as we have, more stuff built into LTP to either fund the team or to redesign the campgrounds. Once they meet a certain standard, they could then be opened up for dogs.
So the bylaw itself has a note that says that the schedules can be amended by resolution publicly notified. So anything in Schedule A or B, which is areas that our dogs are prohibited, can be amended without like public formal consultation using the special consultative procedure, but by council resolution, publicly notified. So if you were to take out, say, Narwee from that prohibited area, and then in January decided that no, that wasn't, or didn't have the intended effect, you could pass by council resolution to add to that schedule. So I think, is that what you're, like, it's sort of what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm kind of asking, is there a way to say like no, but sometimes yes, or what you're saying, yes, but no, sometimes yes?
I think it's probably more clear to outline the areas where dogs are prohibited and add to those, as opposed to saying no, but sometimes yes. Like, thoughts?
So if we say that they're not allowed,
I don't think it matters too much. You could do it either way. You just have to be really clear that which way around it is, so that it's very easy for people to get a bit muddled.
So it's probably analogous to the point where you would, like Masterton has an alcohol ban over Christmas and New Year's on their beaches, but the rest is sort of removed. So what we were suggesting in one of parts was that in the low season, fine, peak season, no. Is that where you're sort of saying where you're getting that no, yes? So overall, it may be yes, but during this period of time, it's a no, or it could be no, except for this period of time where it's a yes.
Yeah, wouldn't that be complicated for the public to know that, though? Wouldn't?
I suppose it would come down to signage. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's prohibited for this, except for November through to March, where there's no dogs allowed. So it'd be a signage thing.
Arrive with their dogs.
Which is when everyone wants to go camping.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess just kind of what I'm picking up is that even though the residents are saying this is what we want, or the feedback that we've got is like, yes, we all want to be able to take our dogs out here. What I'm hearing from you and your team is that that's very hard to police, and it's higher risk, and that you don't have the level of comfort that you would like to have with that situation. So I feel like it would be great to have some sort of space where we can land, where we're saying, yeah, look, dogs, blanket, we don't allow them in these campgrounds. However, we can add in this campground or this campground at a future date when we are resourced able to manage that.
I think that's what Adrian's bringing to attention. We do keep that discretion to add or subtract from the schedule.
Yeah.
Which would indicate what they are.
Yeah. Just wonder if that's going to be more workable in the future rather than adding it in and then having to take it off again later. But, I don't know, maybe
At the moment, we've got a recommendation in front of the committee, which is that we recommend to council does it amend the control of dogs bylaw and allow for dogs in Ngawi camping ground and surf breaks? That's being moved by Councillor Maynard, that's being seconded by the Mayor. Councillor, is there anything you wish to add? No. The only thing I will add is that I think the weight of public opinion is overwhelming in this particular example.
Only here though,
And so does anybody wish to
enough to.
speak for or against? Okay, then I'll put the motion. So all in favour of recommending to council that we allow dogs in the Ngawi camping ground, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And against? No. Okay, so that's carried. So I think probably that gets us to the end of the meeting. Thank you, councillors, for your attention. There was quite a lot of thinking and detail was required there. And I think also it's possibly just worth mentioning that it's highly likely, Katie, that this will be the last time you'll come to a hearings committee. Is that correct? So if that is so, thank you very much.
Everything, Katie, reminds me.
What you have done. It's been great to work with you, and we've always appreciated your thoughtful advice. And so let us end with the same character we ended the last meeting with. Kia tau te rangi ki runga ina iwi o te ao. So thank you very much, everybody.
Sure.
That's the end of the meeting.
Well, good luck, Katie.